Fellow Toastmasters and welcome guests. A filmmaker of some note once compared himself to a politician who recently described himself as the decider, someone who was making important decisions in terms of national security and the use of force in foreign countries. And the filmmaker said, he may be the decider, but I'm the creator. Ladies and gentlemen, I'd rather be a creator than a decider. Keeps me just as busy. Greater power and control is a welcomed asset in this field of filmmaking. And above all, the failures are never ever measured in deaths. As a creator, I'd like to share with you the story of making my 5th short film in 2006 called Meat on a Grill. It's about a man who prepares a grilled dinner against the better judgment of his doctor. Chapter 1, Conception. I was at film school at UCF. I loved it. It was a thriving, utopian-like, hustle and bustle film school community, and it was the best time of my life. However, there doesn't last forever. Spring semester was at an end, and I had to stay at my brother's house in Tampa. So his house was quite spacious, but dark, empty, and silent, and like a tomb. And within this tomb-like environment, I paced and wandered, alone and tormented, because I wanted to come up with an idea for a short film I could make with my brother at his house. And I paced and wandered and was about to give up in absolute frustration when my brother came home one day and announced that he'd won a prize at a contest at work, and that prize was sitting in the garage, and suggested I go take a look. So I was curious and I was eager to see what the hell he was talking about. So I went over to the garage and laid my eyes on this beautiful hunk of metal, this giant new stainless steel barbecue grill, and I knew at that moment, my mind was ignited, and I knew at that moment that I'd make a short film that in some way incorporated this wonderful piece of hardware. Chapter 2, The Supermarket. The script complete, I knew what scene I wanted to shoot first. I typically tend to shoot the most difficult scene first, so the rest of the production is smooth sailing. So, the supermarket, that's where we were going to shoot our first scene. And it involved the main character, played by my brother. He was going to be perusing the meat aisle at the back of the supermarket. And so, I was with him, and I had my camera, and I was ready to line up my shot, and I was framing it, and I realized I didn't like the background, too much clutter. So what you do is you change your perspective, you lower your angle. So I lowered my angle a bit, and still wasn't satisfied, lowered a bit more, and ultimately I ended up on my bottom, on the floor of the supermarket, shooting upwards at my brother. I like the lines of the ceiling in the background intersecting with the foreground of my brother as an actor. Now, I was getting this shot, I noticed something in my periphery, a man standing with hands on his hips like Superman. And I turned my head and, to see what the hell was going on, and it's this guy, this heavy-set, bald guy, looks like a manager, and immediately I felt completely embarrassed with the camera on the floor, shooting up at my brother, or this guy who looks somewhat like me. And I felt embarrassed, and I felt a sense of dread that I was going to be kicked out of the supermarket for going against company policy and recording where I shouldn't be recording. So I stood up, dusted myself off, tried to make myself look a little more presentable. I calmly strolled over to who I assumed was the manager, and I told him, he confirmed he was the manager, I guess, at some point. But I explained that I was shooting a short film with my brother. I explained what the short film was about, and I told him that I'd be out of his hair, no pun intended, in just a moment. So, so I went back. Oh, okay, yeah. So I pitched him what I was doing, and his face went from puzzlement and perplexed to sympathetic and warm. And he allowed me to continue shooting. I told him, like I said, I'd be done soon, so he allowed me to go back to my brother, and we got the shots. And then I got an idea for another shot. I wanted to take advantage of the conveyor belt at the checkout station at the front of the market. So I found the manager somewhere else, and when you really think you shouldn't try someone like this, their patience any longer, you go, and I went and I asked him if he'd allow me to use the conveyor belt. And he was he obliged, and he allowed me to use the conveyor belt, and I got this nice shot of an assortment of red meat traveling down the conveyor belt. You'll get to see what I'm talking about at the end of the meeting. I'll bring that up. But so it was a success. The supermarket shooting, it was a success. I got all the shots I needed, and I was very happy with the way everything turned out. Chapter 3, My Brother. My brother and I have collaborated on 3 short films. All of them, me as the director and him as the actor. He puts up with a lot because I've been described as somewhat of a taskmaster. I like to get all sorts of shots, takes, angles. I like to cover myself adequately, so when I go in the editing room, there's no doubt that I have what I need. So I was really testing his limits when I asked him to do something beyond the pale. There was a scene involved where the main character is cooking some meat on the grill, and I wanted to add some spectacle, some fireworks, literally, to this scene. And I wanted to cut it up and make it more of a jolt, and make it more of a snap, and keep it really simple. It was originally a much more elaborate scene. And so what I did was, well, 2 words came to my mind almost immediately. Lighter fluid. If any of you have ever used lighter fluid with flames, you know that you're in for quite a treat, for quite a show, because you spray just a little of that sucker on an open and lit grill, flames fly up 5 feet into the air. It's exhilarating. So what the scene required was that my brother stand in front of the grill, looking into the flame with a sinister visage on his face, and just off camera be squirting the lighter fluid. I'm sorry. The lighter fluid. Was that the word? Can you help me out here? Was that the word? Was that lighter fluid?
Yes,
Sorry.
it was lighter fluid.
Yeah. Okay, so squeezing the lighter fluid onto the grill, and these flames were just inches from his face, licking the air just in front of him, and I kept directing him, telling him to look into the fire as if you're watching the world burn. And at the same time, he was just really in incredible discomfort. He was just like, "God, hurry up and get the shot, man. This is really hot. It's really uncomfortable." And I kept yelling direction, like, "Okay, yeah, don't worry. Man, this looks great. Like, okay, look into the fire as if you're ogling an attractive woman." And he just continued, incredible discomfort. "Man, hey man, my face is freaking frying here. Like, let's wrap this up, like, quick." And I said, "Yeah, okay, fine. Just give me a few more seconds. Look into the fire as if you're watching your enemies slaughtered before you, ruthlessly." And he stepped away from the grill, and I asked, "Come on, man, just a few more seconds. That's all I'm asking. One more take. And he promptly told me to go F myself and walked out of the terrace. And lucky for me, I tend to overshoot, so I got all the footage I needed. But I made up with my brother later. I told him that it looked great. I showed him the footage, and he agreed, I guess. It was a long time ago. I can't really remember. But he was back on board, and we finished shooting the movie ultimately. And we got the shots. Now, this short film is far from a masterpiece. It's really silly and thin in story content. But where I find its redemption is in its formal aspects, the cinematography and the editing. I like the visuals of it. So I'm going to invite you to stay after the meeting to watch this thing. I'm going to show it up on the big screen. It's only 3 minutes, so it's not going to try your patience. But I want to end by saying, the comparison between creators and deciders. They both expend the same amount of mental energy. Kings rule their whole lives, choosing who lives and who dies, and a filmmaker, does the same thing, except no one's getting killed and no one's, no one's putting that much on the line. Yet, both of those lives exist. Can one substitute for the other? Can we live in a future, maybe some society where the risks aren't that great and you can carry on creating and, living life that way? I'm going to wrap this up. Thank you, and please stay after the meeting. I want to show the short film to all of you. I'm sure you'll enjoy it. Thank you.